Well, fears for many of the countries bordering Russia and Ukraine is that the situation will spill across onto their territory. Georgia is one such country, and for more, we're joined by the president of Georgia, Salome Zourabichvili, who joins me from the capital, Tbilisi. Madam President, thank you for joining us on the programme.
Good evening.
Good evening to you. Your country is an outlier in that Georgia hasn't imposed sanctions on Russia. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that the Georgian government is holding an immoral position. That's a quote towards Ukraine. Why isn't the Georgian government acting to help Ukraine?
Well, that's not how I would describe the position, because Georgia, first of all, is a part of a lot of international sanctions, including all the financial sanctions that concern the Georgian banks as well as anybody else. And our main sanctions are there. We are already, with the occupied territories, having our share of sanctions. We have 20% of our territory that is occupied. We do not have diplomatic ties with Russia. We do not have air flights with Russia. So that's the situation of Georgia. We have gone through.
Madam President, journalists haven't been able to leave the country to go and report on the situation in Ukraine. We've also heard that volunteers haven't been allowed into Ukraine to help forces on the ground. So what's behind this? What is the position that isn't necessarily supportive of Ukraine?
There is a lot of propaganda that is going on. Georgian volunteers, as in many other countries, have left on their own as volunteers. It's not a question for the government. And clearly, those questions have been even asked to the State Department spokesperson, and he has understood very well and explained that Georgia, having its part of the territory occupied, being on the front line, does not exactly behave as a country that is member of NATO and is protected in many different ways. But that does not deprive in any way the solidarity of the Georgian state, which I am expressing, the solidarity of the Georgian people that have been demonstrating day after day their full support to Ukraine. And I want today to express this solidarity through you to the people in Kiev in front of these terrible bombings, and express also my admiration for the type of very organized and very calm resistance that the people of Ukraine are putting in front of this terrible aggression.
You mentioned that people have been coming out onto the streets of Georgia to protest what is happening in Ukraine. Many people on the streets have also been concerned that the Georgian government is not doing enough. So can you further address that? And are you not concerned that people in Georgia may become frustrated at the government's response?
I think that's not the case. I don't know where you get the information. I don't think that the people in Georgia are frustrated. I think that the people in Georgia are showing themselves a lot of solidarity, a lot of initiative. As I told you, the government and the state has been doing everything that can be done by a country that has part of its territory occupied. And the rest is done by the population itself. Showing itself the support. There are doctors that have been going on. There are volunteers that on their own have been going on. There is no need for Georgia to be putting some forms of provocation that could be used later on. We have a very good example of what Vladimir Zelensky has been doing to avoid himself being in any way the provocateur in this. So he has taken out and taken away all forms of arguments for Russia, and it has been made very clear that Russia has started an all-out aggression without any motive or any provocation. So that's how Georgia is also behaving.
You just mentioned Georgia's location and the fact that due to its location, you said it may not be able to act in the same way as other countries. And I want to ask you what precisely you mean by that. And are you concerned that your government may be engaging in appeasement of the Kremlin out of fears of what Russia might do to Georgia?
No, I think there is no fear here, and I'm representing the state as much as the government. There is no fear, there is no appeasement. What I'm saying is very clear. We are not in the same situation as countries that are beyond the red line that has been put by NATO and by the President Biden very clearly, saying that where the protection goes up to the countries that are covered by Article 5. We're not covered by anything. We have 20% of the country that is occupied, but that doesn't mean that we have no principles. That doesn't mean that we're not sharing the solidarity. If you looked, you've seen that Georgia has been co-sponsoring all the resolutions in the international organizations, voting all the resolutions. We're part of the international sanctions, and we are part of the solidarity. So I think that we're doing what a country in this situation should be doing, having the past of Georgia and knowing, as Georgia knows, what are the principles of a small country that has defended its independence against all forms of invasion for now centuries.
Georgia joined Ukraine and Moldova in signing a decree calling for membership of the European Union, and it sped that up. So how much did the situation in Ukraine, watching that invasion, give impetus to that and say, we want to be part of the European Union?
I think we owe a lot to Ukraine and Ukraine's fight for having opened the eyes of the Europeans in a different way. We were on that path, and we were on that path together because we had formed this associated trio that met last summer in Batumi in Georgia. But this new situation is one that has created a new perception among the European countries, among the European leaders and their institutions. And I think that has allowed for this new reiterated declaration of candidature that three countries have presented. And I'm very hopeful that there will be a new window of opportunity that will be less bureaucratic, more political, because that's the type of political solidarity that all these three countries need, and that's the path that has been reopened and accelerated in a way by Ukraine.
Madam President, to be very clear, watching the events unfold in Ukraine and knowing Georgia's history and what happened in 2008 with Russia, can you tell me today that you are confident that Vladimir Putin will not make moves on Georgia in the same way that he has done in Ukraine?
I would be stupid if I were so confident. Nobody can say that. The main principle for us is to be firm, to maintain our ties with the European Union, to maintain, and that's very important, within Georgia, our unity, and continue our path towards the Euro-Atlantic integration. That is our path. Nobody has been able to change our path over these past years, despite the war, despite the pressures on the occupation line. That is our path, it's our future, and will continue. And nobody can predict the future.